You are listening to the Red Pill Chronicles, where we help awakening souls deal with the blue pill world. I'm your host, John Dennison, and together we'll explore how to take an inner approach to your outer affairs so you can build a better life and a better world to live it in. Hello, my friend. John here again. I'm not sure what's gotten into me. Here I am doing 2 pods in 1 week after several months of a hiatus, and apparently just in starting the ball rolling, it's unleashed the Kraken, so to speak, and you're going to have to put up with all this new stuff that's coming out, and I don't really know if it's new or what. We're going to find out. But I'm anxious to see what unfolds. Today, I want to talk about ascension in the spiritual path. And this raises a couple of issues that every awakening soul needs to be aware of, which are obviously ascension and the spiritual path, and the two are related. Now, we've heard a lot about the term ascension, though in recent months and last couple of years they start calling it the event or other things that are supposed to be happening. But frankly, I'm not really sold on the prospects of an event occurring that, as people are envisioning it, that something is magically going to happen, is going to transform our world from this cauldron of conflict into the golden age of peace and prosperity. And there are a number of historical reasons for that, not the least of which is I've been in several lifetimes working toward this event occurring, and we've talked about it in many shapes and sizes over the years, but always been the same thing. It's like dangling a carrot that some great thing is going to happen if only we act in a certain way, if only we do this. It kind of takes me back to my days as a youth when I would listen to my grandmother talk to me about the rapture, which is, in Christian parlance, is the raising up of the dead and the lifting up of the chosen into heaven, either before or after Armageddon. I'm not sure which, because frankly I have not really followed Christian theology very closely in the last couple of decades. But that is the basic concept behind it, is that it permeates a number of religions over the centuries, is that there is something that's going to happen that's going to cause us all to be lifted up out of this realm and taken somewhere else, whether that's heaven or to another world or another lifetime or another dimension. Who knows? Because the stories all differ. The tellers of the tale are all different. Their backgrounds are different. Their filters are different. And you really don't know what divine source of energy that they're tapping into and whether that is filtered or not. Because, again, these things do happen. I'm not really trying to disparage the idea of an ascension event. I think it's important that we live with the hope that and belief that if we live a certain way and prepare ourselves for something more, that there is some reward at the end of the tunnel. Maybe that's going to heaven, or maybe that's passing into Western paradise, or nirvana, or whatever else may be waiting out there. But we just don't know. Now, maybe we do know, and it's just not made aware to us here in this world. But again, we're trying to discuss a concept for which there is no basis in tangible reality. There's no basis in fact to prove or show that this is going to happen, though we try to point to the different things that we think would support one conclusion or another and use that to bolster our arguments. That really isn't a very good solution in terms of whether there ultimately is an ascension occurring. So let me refer to ascension then in a different process from just lifting us up from this world and taking us to whatever waits beyond or heaven. I'm going to use the term ascension as being a process of graduating from one density of consciousness or dimension, if you will, to another one that requires greater consciousness or density of consciousness, such as going from a third density to fourth density consciousness, such as is described in the Law of One. The Law of One provides that they don't refer to dimensions so much as densities of consciousness, and that these different levels of consciousness that we are working our way through on our way back to a unity consciousness with all that is. The challenge in not having this common ground is trying to put our process of awakening and spiritual evolution within some sort of a context, because when you take away the promise of the carrot that's dangled before us, then is the process even valid anymore? Is it necessary to even follow these things? And to be honest with you, I can't give you an answer on that. That's something you're going to have to make up your own decision. You make up your own mind on in whatever choice fits the frame of reference and perspectives from which you're seeing your life at this moment. It's not a matter that I can tell you that there's an absolute right or wrong. It's irrelevant. What's relevant, though, is that we have to live in this world. So how do we live in this world? And by what standards and what rules of behavior do we apply to ensure that we get the most out of it, and as well as prepare us for what comes afterwards, if anything comes afterwards? And again, you're going to say, well, geez, what kind of a guy is this that's telling us, who's talking about the spiritual path when he's not even holding out the prospect of a permanent solution or a perspective on this? And the reason I don't is because there are a lot of different spiritual traditions that see the afterlife or afterlives in different ways. I personally like the view that is offered by Veronica, a collective entity channeled by April Crawford, that talks about linear reality and non-linear reality. That we live in a We live in a linear reality based upon the concept of time, and that matter are the sort of the building blocks through which the experiences are created throughout the process of the time. It's, in other words, that the time is created initially, and then it's just a matter of simply playing out the different experiences that are created along the timeline. That's sort of the view of linear reality. And nonlinear reality, obviously, is all bets are off. It's like there is no time, there is no, or at least not time in the concept we have, though there is some potential for time because they do incorporate the possibility of change. And therefore, if there's change, then there is a static condition at any one moment that is not the same as it would be in a subsequent moment. So, but then again, if it's not linear, then all of those moments are occurring simultaneously, or perhaps in some other format, or maybe they're just happening, all of them, a few of them happening here and a few of them happening there. But when pieced together, they tend to play out whatever it is that the experiences of that lifetime are intended to bring. But at the end of the rainbow of the life, the carrot that's really at the end of the stick is not the ascension per se of the lifting up into other directions, but it is what happens to us after we leave this world. It's the life after death scenario. In other words, that there is a continuity of life beyond. As one who has been in a near-death situation, I can tell you that from my own personal experience through there, what I experienced was like a shimmering black veil that you penetrated through the veil, and then there was nothing. Such as, in other words, like you stick your arm through it, but like you're watching a movie, now they stick their arm through the dimensional barrier, and they could see it on the other side. Well, it wasn't like that. It was like you go through this barrier, and there's nothing. And that is sort of what I was experiencing then, that there was life in this world and all the things that were happening, and then there was nothingness. But that was not the issue of what I was not understanding that really was the issue of post-life. It was because my attention was still focused here in this world, and therefore if it's not focused in this world, it wasn't focused anywhere, because the attention or the consciousness or aspect of the consciousness that I have within this life is focused upon living this life. And therefore when I pulled out of it, went through that curtain, so to speak, that shimmering black veil of nothingness, there was nothing more to see. Yet the consciousness was still there. It was just awareness. There wasn't anything to focus that awareness upon. But I can tell you that in my travels throughout time, that there appears to be something more beyond that. Once the experience of life is done and the soul turns its attention away and it closes off that element of consciousness, then it automatically shifts to somewhere else. Now, in other words, one door closes, another one opens or reopens. Now, I can't tell you what that is, but let's work on the concept that it's this non-linear reality that Veronica discussed. In a non-linear reality, the non-linear reality of the law of one is actually a multi-dimensional reality, or a multi-density reality of various densities, working our way all the way down from the lowest to the first density, working our way up to the seventh density, and finally passing from that into eighth density, which is where we return to source, and then the whole process starts over beyond that. This is the law of one concept. We are in a third density reality right now. And in a third density reality under the law of one, upon the graduation from this reality, we then pass into a fourth dimensional reality. This is the concept that we'll be working with and we'll call Ascension, which is the process of graduation from this reality to another. There may be other ways of seeing and defining this ascension, but we're limited based upon our own current perspectives and understandings. And sometimes we glimpse a little more through spirit, or what spirit allows us to see from this nonlinear reality. But ultimately, it's what we make of with the ideas that it gives us in terms of how it affects our lives here and how we live them. And it is this process of how we live our lives that brings about the changes to us from the inception of our creation through this lifetime until the end of the lifetime. And the process of those changes is part of our evolution that's brought about by the experiences of life. I've long said that life is a collection of experiences that are created to allow us to evolve. This process of evolving from the inception to death and whatever waits beyond is what I refer to as traveling the spiritual path. And the spiritual path, in simpler terms, is the way in which we go about changing ourselves to make us more suitable for whatever else may come after this life. And not knowing what that is, then we have to go about gathering the beliefs and the practices and perspectives that are going to allow us to work toward it. For instance, if we find ourselves in a service to self situation where we are manipulating others and trying to make them do or control them, to make them do what we want. Again, this is what I was discussing in the last show, which is the conflict of wills. That if an individual is in service to self, their primary motivation is going to be to serve themselves. It may be through helping or serving others, but that is only intended to do so from the benefit that it brings to them. And their evolution, they have basically find themselves on a path of evolution through service to self that the law of one tells us separates after this third dimensional reality. We were talking about the spiritual path. And the spiritual path is that process that we go through to move ourselves toward whatever destination we have. According to the law of one, this is reunion with God, with all that is, a return to oneness, or return to source, however you want to see it. But it is a reunification with God and with all that is supposedly the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And it is that process that we, at supposedly this concept of a higher self, has embodied itself created a soul and embodied itself in this and other lifetimes to go about gathering experiences by which it can modify its own energies and begin to evolve from where it is in 6th density reality into a 7th density or 8th density reality. And that is a process, according to the law of one of Ra, that discusses it, talks about the harmonization of the energies so that there is no polarity anymore within the being. So we're here living within this three-dimensional world in a polarized environment where we are having both aspects of experience within us at the same time, and depending upon these circumstances, those are brought forth for us to see and for us to express in the world. And as you can see in the world around you, polarization is getting greater, which means people are moving toward one of their poles in some aspects of their lives and not toward a state of balance. So from a perspective of the spiritual path, how does this apply to the law of one? Okay, so when the polarization is intended to work upon various aspects of the energy bodies within the physical body. It could be changing the hue or frequency of individual chakras. It could be clearing out debris that's contained in the other body. It could be removing emotionally charged memories that we carry within us that act as triggers and to bring forth those darker aspects of ourselves to be seen when we otherwise would want to push them and lock them, push them aside and lock them away. So this is really a question of what happens after death. It's a question of what we do during the time we're here to make us better to live our lives, the lives that we need to live here, at the same time as making that journey. From a Christian standpoint, and I keep going back there because that's the religion. I was raised as a Methodist in a family of Christians, and I'm very well versed in the history, and I still am one. It's just that I have additional beliefs on top of those that have been informed by, how would you say, personal experiences from other lifetimes. Whether the end result is getting to heaven or getting to the next density of consciousness to continue working our way back to this wholeness that we're trying to create in our higher selves, so that aspect of us, or the totality of us, can reunite with God, is really less of a factor than how we go about the process of making ourselves better. Now, in Christianity, the law of getting there was basically to love your neighbor as yourself, to love each other, to turn the other cheek. These were the prime teachings of Jesus. besides the fact that your connection to God is very personal to you, that you are each connected and have the ability to draw upon the presence, both to live this life as well as to make the journey through the dimensions back home. And what I've been trying to do is to lay out the spiritual path so that you can understand the process that you're going through, and that you don't get so caught up on the different methods that are suggested or laid out by different yogic and spiritual traditions that say how you have to act in order to get there. Basically, the process of preparing the body is one of clarifying and preparing your energy fields for that process of, to pass onward. And if you can complete it, then you can do like some of the masters, like Yogananda, that just basically decide to leave the body and they're gone. That they can do it at will. Most of us probably are not going to get to that point. I have no idea even how it's done. I just know that it's been discussed. Now me, I don't hold myself out as a master. I'm a disciple on the path, just like you, working my way back to source, back to oneness. And I've done this through many lifetimes. But where I am right now in this life, my particular role is not to complete my journey so that I am not doing some of the things necessary for that process of cultivating those energy fields. Then that would be pursuing intense meditation and the state of samsara, which would be merger with the soul, of the consciousness of the soul of the mind. But this is, in fact, what I am trying to get you to get to without that, which is the process of integrating your inner and outer aspects, or your mind with your soul. And this process of integration is one of setting aside the ego and allowing what's inside you to work directly in this world to create the experiences you need. Now, why in the world would you ever want to do this? Would you ever want to set aside your ego and allow some other entity, even God, to work through you and structure your life for you? I mean, because, well, we'll get to that in a moment. We'll get to the downsides of it. But understand, the reason that we are doing this at this time and approaching it in this way, so that you understand that is the cultivation of those energy fields is done in specific manners according to the need, your life. Well, there aren't too many yogis or masters that can tell you what you need for your lifetime. The only one who really knows that is your soul and your spirit guides that are trying to help you through the experiences that you're having. So, the process of cultivation, of preparation that I have been teaching has been based upon the negation or moderation of the ego so that it can step aside. But in order to do that, it's got to apply all the different teachings of all the different traditions. It's got to love. It's got to have compassion. It's got to feel connected to all that is. And it's got to feel that it's serving others as well as serving itself. And at the boot, serving God. Because that's its purpose in existence, is to be whole. And that's our purpose, is to be returned to wholeness. But it's only returning to wholeness after we have experienced ourselves and our relations to the others in this world, as well as the world itself, through separation, through the experiences of being apart. And that's what life this year has been, is an exercise in separation. Now, from a spiritual perspective, that gives you a sort of an overview. I have a new phone, and I'm trying to figure out how to mute it so I can turn off my notifications when I speak to you. We'll see if I got it right this time. Since I'm doing it without my glasses on, it's even harder. Anyway, the purpose, besides the fact of understanding your process, and is the negation of the ego. Let me put the process in simpler terms. It's to set this ego aside. It's to allow the inner to control the inner self to control the actions and thoughts and events of your outer life. And then it's and in order to ensure that flow that's coming through you is not distorted and turned into something that can do harm to others or to yourself, is that it has to be free of the what I call egoic distortions, which are these conditions that we pick up within us, the scars, the pains, the desires, the unmet desires, the resentments and biases, and all the different misunderstandings, all the different things that we have inside us that block and filter the light and distort what comes through. And those things also distort how we hear and interpret the inner voice that's trying to guide us. Because if you followed me for any time, you'll understand there are two basic principles that I want you to pick up. The first of which is I want you to know yourself. I want you to know who you are and what you're all about. I don't want you to know what other people tell you you are. I don't want them to tell you that you're a spirit having a physical experience in a three-dimensional body. I want you to go know yourself to whatever extent you can in this lifetime. Well, knowing of your soul is hard from the perspective of the mind, but you can know yourself as you have created yourself. Because the way you have created yourself is what's going to determine the course of your lifetime and how you go about gathering the experiences that are going to allow you to expand your consciousness and grow toward the light. The circumstances that cause you to do this, those experiences, these are catalysts. So basically what happens is we set aside our desires, but because we haven't ascended yet, we still have to have experiences, but we don't know exactly what those experiences that we need are. And so that the soul leads us to the experiences or creates the ones that we need. What this means is that you set aside your desire to do the will of God that's flowing through you. And when you do that, it's a really weird place to be in, because the life you get may not necessarily be the life that you want. And you could find yourself going down paths that have absolutely nothing to do with where you intended to go. And so you're going to find yourself in this tug of war between the ego and the soul. The ego that still hasn't lost or totally detached from this world. And it still has desires, and it still has fears, and it still has these built-in that are still controlling our actions. Yet we want this ego to voluntarily set all that aside and allow this third party from the soul to come in and tell us what to do. None. Anybody see any thing strange here about going into a situation where you have desires of a life you want to create in order to progress along the spiritual path? This is the principle of detachment, and that has long marked the spiritual path of the most serious adepts. And it's gone from, I've seen it from Taoism to Buddhism to the various Abrahamic religions and the way they've all been practiced to even the various New Age manifestations of spirituality. That there is a process of detachment from this world that is necessary in order to turn our focus toward the one we're moving toward. That the one we're moving toward is the one that starts taking precedence, and everything else starts to be seen within that context of how it's adding to the process of our evolution. And this is the perspective, this is the mindset that I'm hoping that you will take from listening to me, if you are in fact listening to me. And if you're not, that's okay too. because I don't put it out there and expect you to follow it or adopt it. I'm planting seeds that may not sprout and grow in this lifetime. But I want you to understand the seeds, and I want you to see the process of what you're doing and the things that you're going about in order to accomplish this. There are various ways of working upon the body's energy fields. I do not profess to have an exhaustive list of them. I can tell you that some of them include meditation. Some of them include various types of chanting or sound therapy. Others act upon the principle of using ritual to gather energies and to draw upon outside influences like channels and masters in order to get some insight as to what needs to be done and which way to go. But ultimately, it all is going to come down to one thing, and it's going to come down to you and how you perceive your reality and how you go about making the choices and then gathering the experiences that those choices lead you to within your lifetime. Now, why is it so important that I give you this information? Well, maybe it's not. But if you're an awakening soul, odds are good you're starting to focus on where you're going from here. And you're going to get into this fifth dimensional reality, and you're going to need to know how to function. And I'm trying to give you some of the tools that you're going to need to move around in this 5D world. Because desire is not necessarily going to be one of them, or at least desire in the sense of getting for oneself. Or at least how we define getting for oneself is going to play out. Now, in the fifth dimensional reality, as I have been led to understand it, that these tools of navigation, your inner voice, is going to be your prime source of direction for your life, not the desires that you have now. Your desires are going to be more in terms of the primary intention with which you are going into that reality. And that, again, as I've said before, is a reality that's going to be split between those who are under service of self and those who are service to others. Now, if you're on the service to self path, they say that you're supposed to be moved off world. Now, how are you going to be moved off world unless you're killed in this one? So that's not a very good option for your life here if you are in service to self. Nevertheless, if you are in service to self, you know what you're up to and you know what you're trying to accomplish. And basically what you're trying to do is take advantage of everybody else who is trying to serve others as they are serving themselves. When I say service to others, this is not a total denigrate yourself and do everything for other people and do nothing to help you. That's not the case. What happens is you're going to find yourself on that continuum where you're thinking more and more about how to help other people. Well, in the fifth dimension, it's not so much about helping others. It's going to be about where you choose to fit into the whole of your group, the whole of your society, the whole of your world, the whole of your existence is going to be a matter of where you're going to be looking to find your contribution and your place to fit in there. And then you may have one or more places. But right now, none of us know how to navigate that reality. And the only way that we're going to know what those places are is we have to be led to them. And we have to be led by what? By this inner mastery within us, the presence within. So I want you to spend some time on your own. There is a presence within you. And you don't have to meditate to do this. You can just sit quietly and start trying to feel the different energies that are moving through your body. And the more you relax, the more you'll feel them. But within that energy and subsisting it is an intelligence. And you're going to find as you get in there, you're going to start finding that intelligence looking back at you. and talking to you and telling you how to interpret what's occurring, because it wants you to use the information that it brings you in order to evolve yourself or to change yourself in the way that it needs you to move, for it to move closer to oneness. All right, so the first reason that we would want to go down this path is going to be how to navigate 5D. Obviously, we talked about your spiritual evolution. It is the process of basically getting to heaven. And regardless of the path that you take, at the end of the day, all the roads are going to join, because you have to put the ego aside. This is why the ancient wisdom talks about the fact that in order to integrate or become whole, the soul must be bathed in the blood of the heart. And this phrase means, bathed in the blood of the heart, means the flower of desire has to be ripped out of the heart. This is the process of renunciation and detachment that is common within the spiritual teachings of we'll call them the ancient Himalayan spiritual teachings that spread throughout, mostly throughout Asia. They have different manifestations, but they all basically work off the same principle. Obviously, another benefit of following this path, of the path of releasing desire and following your inner voice, is one of peace. Not the peace of having your desires all fulfilled, but the peace of harmonizing your life with the world around you and with the spiritual world within you, because then you begin to achieve a balance within you that allows the energies of the polarized energies within you to sort of balance themselves out and quiet down. And this is what the Buddha was always talking about the middle path for, is that it's a matter of moving between the extremes, not the extremes of society, the extremes of you, and finding the middle place in you where you can be in balance and trying to stay within that place of balance at all times. The more you can stay balanced, the less susceptible you're going to be to emotional upset, and the less susceptible you're going to be to people on Twitter or elsewhere or Facebook triggering you because of things that are inside you that you maybe not even know are there, that you haven't even dealt with. So peace in your life and peace with the world around you is an important aspect of this that certainly comes when you start releasing your attachment to the desires and the things that you fight over now. So again, it's not a matter of just moving through this life to get to the next one. It's a matter of moving through this life to have a better life while you're here. And peace is the way. Peace, that's why I keep saying that peace is both the end that we seek and the means. Because when we get into this state of absolute balance as we work our way up toward unity, we have to be in balance. And those rough edges have to be sanded off. That's what the different lifetimes are for. Is they're trying to energetically balance us so that we can become whole. Well, when you take that process of balancing upon yourself and you start doing it in this life, then there is less for you to do in other lifetimes, and therefore advancing your journey back to oneness. But understand, there are burdens that come with traveling the spiritual path, at least consciously traveling the spiritual path and making these kind of choices. And obviously, the most salient one that we've just discussed is when your personal desires and needs may not be met. I can tell you from my own experience that sometimes those desires are immaterial, because when it comes down to a conflict between you and your soul, who's going to win? Okay, now maybe you turn to the desire and you go pursue the desire for a while, But if your soul is telling you to let it go, ultimately you're going to have to let it go. And anything you do in this life is going to be temporary. So you're creating up an experience where you're at odds with whatever your inner voice is telling you. So that's one of the problems, is the separateness. In other words, that the inability to renunciate or to renounce or to let go of your attachments to the different desires and things in this world can be a problem. And so then it's not that the experiences will not be brought, but the experiences that are brought may bring you even deeper into that situation of discontent with your reality, because it's trying to get you to, your soul is trying to get you to different ways of seeing and dealing with those energies. And of course, to give you other choices. Those experiences it creates, though, are not necessarily the fulfillment of your desires. They're catalysts by which you to grow. So the more you go down the spiritual path, the more freedom your soul has to create these catalysts. So and sometimes those catalysts can be pretty severe. In my instance, they nearly killed me. They turned my life upside down, put me in the hospital with for almost 6 months or 5 months, and it was almost 6 by the time I got out of the second time. And it just is out of your hands. You just have to ride it. You got to ride the dragon and play out your hand. There's nothing you can do. You do it the best you can do. But understand that when you do go down the path toward your own unification, you are going to incur catalysts along the way. And these catalysts are going to test you and challenge you and make you and break you or make you into something better. The change, or something different at least, whether it's better or not, is totally up to you. And what you choose to do with those experiences is up to you. And that, again, sets the course for your future evolution, because you set in action other inner. Well, when you release your desires, those karmic energies are much, much, much diminished and lessened, so that you don't have to be as concerned about having to. All right. Another problem that we run into, particularly living in this world, is the process that people have been facing here for eons, which is what happens when good people interact with bad people. With people that live with goodness in their heart and caring and concern for other people interact with those who are motivated by darkness or evil or self-interest, such as those that are in the pursuit of power that you see on the news these days. Okay, that is a distortion toward power. And so they're playing out the experiences that they need. But those are all in service to self. It's not in service to others. No matter how grandiose they may paint their cause, ultimately, if it's in separation, it's not leading you to wholeness. So you're going to be forced to have to try to navigate your way through these obstacles. And the biggest obstacles are going to be other people and what they want. And so you're living in a world trying to advance yourself on your own spiritual journey, and you're having to deal with all these myriad interests that are trying to force you to do what they want to do, or doing things that are affecting the life you're trying to create for yourself. And you are somehow trying to let go of what you want and go with the flow of where your inner voice is leading you. And that may be to fight back or to take a stand against them. Or it may be to withdraw. But understand that when you go into the fray, when you go into the conflict and you put energy into conflict, the conflict perpetuates. And what it does when you add your energy into the conflict, that puts you into the three-dimensional framework of the reality you're trying to evolve to leave. In other words, your fight just may end up creating karmic waves that you're going to have to deal with somewhere else down the road. And you know what I mean by that, other lifetimes. And again, here I am. I got to put the glasses on to read my notes. I scribbled them on the back of an envelope. Let's see. I usually don't work from notes, but I wanted to make sure I got through all the stuff for you today. One of the big problems that we run into, all of us run into, is dealing with people who are in service to self. Yet, those same people, those same beings, are all expressions of the one infinite creator, God, or the Tao, the oneness that we're trying to get back to. They're all trying to get to the same place you are. Now, the problem is they're taking a different path to get there, and their path is interfering with your experience of life in this one. But it's through the experience of dealing with them and having to interact with them and bring out the best of your attributes to do so that you begin to evolve in consciousness, in balance, in its balancing of your energies, and in your advancement towards your spiritual destination, which may or may not be reached after this lifetime or within this lifetime. I don't know that you will ever get there within the time frame that you're talking about of linear reality. Linear reality just has a tendency to just keep going on and on and on, and some of us get rather enamored with it, and others of us have agreed to come back as the bodhisattva vow, something along the lines that so long as suffering remains, I shall remain. In other words, you keep coming back, and as long as people are suffering in this world, you keep coming back over and over again to show them the way home. And I guess I'm still struggling under that vow, because it tends to keep you in the fight. In this case, the fight for the light, rather than, I didn't say life, I just said light. The fight for the light. And to get the light to have supremacy in this world so that people can see and make their way along the path. It is a difficult challenge to interact with those people who are not of the light, who have chosen, and basically we call of the light, are the ones who are choosing the path of service to others and service to God, whereas service to self could be a service to a God, but a different God, such as Malik or Balak or whatever, that goes along with the Satanists and the dark energies, and those are people for supporting those who are in service to self. Those are again choices that you're going to face over your lifetime or other lifetimes. But in no way does your movement along the path abdicate or assume responsibility for the life that you have or the state of the world that you're living it in. You have come into this world. Your creative energies contribute to this world. It's your creative energies that you apply in the creation of your life and the things that you do that contribute to the collective consciousness that creates this reality. So you and I and all of us have a responsibility to our reality. As Muhammad Ali said, we each have a responsibility to this world. Well, it's not just to leave and to get ourselves out of here, though many of us would love to get out of here right now because Mad Max is unfolding as we speak, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. But we'll get where we're trying to go. It's just going to be a rough ride. It's just going to be a rough ride. But one thing about the service to others path is that at some point along the way, you actually will step forward in service to others by trying to do things that will enhance their experience of life. That could be through missions. It could be through acts of kindness or philanthropy. It could be in starting a business that brings jobs to people that need them. Whatever your expression is of your that you're inspired to make, that contribution is important because it's partly playing out your responsibility and your contribution to this reality. So you have to be aware of those energies when they're within you. You are not here to get out of here. You're here to do something while you're here. The process of being here is what makes you evolve. So you want to be, when you're done with the process, in other words, when you die, you want to be better than when you started, or at least when you were younger as a young adult, when you were all wrapped up in yourself. Well, now at the end of the game, what your focus is going to be on something different. It's going to be on your legacy. It's going to be on your family. It's going to be on your God and where you're going after your lifetime. But nevertheless, it's the process of getting to that state of mind and that state of perspective that is so important. Spiritual path is not a matter of there is some do this and you get that kind of a result. It's more of an art form that you have to develop as you go along in your lifetime. This is why I tell you, you have to know your own way, you have to know yourself, and you have to find the way for your own development that works for you. Believe me, you'll be led to what you need when you need it. But nevertheless, that's you're going to have that responsibility to take care of yourself, to take care of your own evolution. But only when your consciousness gets to a point that you can realize that you're trying to evolve. But understand, the world that you live in is a reflection of you and how you are inside, and the kind of light and the kind of energies that you're bringing into your world. And if you change yourself and you change the expression of those energies and you change the way that they function within you and that they flow more smoothly and in more balance and in more positive terms instead of being destructive outside of yourself toward the world around you, you will find that your advancement is going to come much quicker. Much quicker. Well, anyway, that's been my overview of the spiritual path for you today. And you can see it does have to do with ascension, but then it doesn't. Because ascension is this nebulous thing that's dangled out here and promised to us. And we really don't know if it's ever going to happen, but we kind of have to live in the way in hopes that it will. And we certainly have to hope that those who are of the darkness somehow see the light and begin treating others with kindness and respect and love. But unfortunately, that's not the way it is. So we have our hands full. So to the extent that you are called by your inner voice to act, to do something in the world, whether to help those who are suffering and struggling, or whether to stand against those who are trying to do them harm, whatever it is, you need to know that. But when you do it, you must do it dispassionately. You must do it without the emotional overlay that comes with so much else in our lives. And you certainly must do it without trying to get some sort of aspect of gain for yourself out of it. This does not mean that you should never do something along this path that you're going to get paid for. It just means that the primary purpose of your doing it is not the money, but it's the service. And that the compensation comes in the exchange of energy or the return of energy to you, which is going to have to return to you one way or another because you're going to still have to survive in this world unless you just so deplete yourself that you give to other people that there's nothing left for you and then you just collapse and die. And that was sort of the situation that I was getting myself into, where I told you I got sick before. And it's been a long recovery. And I thought I was done with this path, but God picked me up and dusted me off and pointed me at the path and said, get out there and do your thing. And so I'm talking to you, and I'm asking you to look at yourself, to look at your journey through life and evaluate how you have changed and why you have changed. Look at the catalysts your life has brought and find the value for your soul's journey within them. Find the areas where you have resistance within you or where your defenses are so high that you can't allow yourself to experience something else or even to see it another way. That is what you have ahead of you if you follow this course. But I know you can do it, and I know you will do it. Whether you do it in this lifetime or 100 lives from now, the seed has been planted. So in a sense, I'm not speaking to you. I'm speaking to your soul. That it's time to pursue the process of awakening, to make your journey home. If you've made the turn toward the light, now it's time to get there and to do everything to do it consciously. Unless you just want to drag your feet and be caught up in the winds of conflict, the dramas and difficulties of this world. But even in the midst of all those dramas, there is only one. It is not just you, and it is not just God. It's all of the others in the world with you. They are your other selves, and you are all going to the same place, back to oneness. That's why the phrase, where we go one, we go all. It is within this oneness that I ask you to find yourself and to find your peace and your balance from the winds blowing through your world. And to the extent that you are able to evolve, to detach from the cares and concerns of your life and to just know that everything is somehow going to work out. And your job is just to experience it and give it your best in this moment, knowing that it is enough. It not only has got to be enough, it's all you've got to give. So you give your best, and what you give now may not be as good as you're going to give, or you could have given, but you give your best you can at this moment, aware that you're having to balance those other factors that require your attention, that require effort within this world. There's no playbook written for living life as a human. We have to figure it out as we go along. And frankly, previous generations and the common narrative that's taught to us in society are not doing us any favors. They deny our existence, the existence of anything more than what is in this world. That's why we're all slipping into darkness right now. So please, protect yourself, but keep your eyes on the light. That's where you're going, and everything that happens to you needs to be interpreted and addressed within that context. You are so much more than you know, and I want you to find it. God bless you indeed. Thank you for joining me today. I am John Dennison. Again, if you have any questions or you need to reach me at all, visit me at johndennison.com. That is my name site. I have a bunch of others, but that is where you can find out about my work and everything else. And I do still offer a free consultation for those who need help understanding themselves and their journey through life and trying to figure out where to go from here. God bless you indeed. Go with love. You have been listening to the Red Pill Chronicles, where we help awakening souls move in a better way through a blue pill world. For more information, visit us at peaceoptions.com to explore how you can find your peace through knowing yourself and following your inner voice. Or at missionlaunch.com, where we offer coaching and consulting to help you make the difference in your world.